Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. We have a little bit of an emergency broadcast here tonight on Saturday. So it's not an official episode, but tonight is a big night. Truly historic. Moments ago, the United States entered the war with Iran officially, and we've been watching this for the past couple of weeks, waiting to see what the president's decision would be, whether we would enter the conflict or not. And tonight we finally got our answer. Hours ago, the United States dropped 6 bunker buster bombs from B-2 stealth bombers on Iran's nuclear facility at Fordo. In addition, we launched 30 missiles via submarine at Isfahan and Natanz, their other 2 nuclear facilities. And now we're waiting for a speech, an address from the president tonight. It'll take place in a half hour. 10 o'clock Eastern time is when it's scheduled to start. We're officially in the war, just as I predicted. And it's sort of an unbelievable situation. It's shocking. Not shocking for me, of course. I called it a year ago. But to impress upon people the significance of this, of course, the biggest dimension of this conflict is that, as I said last night on the show, if you watched last night or throughout the week, Israel is the operative factor that has drawn the United States into this conflict. This is not our war. This is not our fight. Iran poses no threat to the United States strategically. They're a regional power, barely at this point. This is their fight, and in spite of the president's reluctance, we have now been drawn into a shooting war, a direct conflict, with major airstrikes against Iran. And to impress upon you the significance of that fact, for those that don't know, for those that have been living under a rock for the past 20 years, what is so surprising about this is that, of course, Trump ran 10 years ago against the legacy of the Iraq War. You might recall that in 2015, in the Republican primary for the presidential nomination, Jeb Bush was the frontrunner at this time. And when Trump entered the race against him, he, of course, was running not only against Jeb Bush himself, but the legacy of the Bush family. That George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. were responsible for bringing us into a war in Iraq and initiating what has now become 25 years, a full quarter century of forever wars, never-ending wars, counterinsurgencies and airstrikes and drone strikes and ground forces in the Middle East. When Trump ran in 2015, he ran against the legacy of the Iraq War. 9/11 as the casus belli for a global war on terror, which has wasted all of our resources, all of our energy, and has ushered in the late stage, maybe the closing stage of our American empire. 10 years ago, he said the war in Iraq was a mistake. They said they have weapons of mass destruction. There were none. We knew there were none. Now, as far as Iran is concerned, in this space, in politics, and specifically on the right wing, on the dissident side, bombing Iran is like the first tile on the bingo card of the Israel lobby. Bombing Iran is like a punchline. What are they going to make us do next? We fought in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, West Africa. We're fighting everywhere. 10 years ago, people like Patrick Buchanan were saying war with Iran is what they want. George W. Bush declined to prosecute a war against Iran, which is what Israel wanted. And you could go back to 1996 in their clean break report. They said the plan was simple. First Iraq, then Syria, then Iran. And as much as that was synonymous with Israeli exuberance, their influence over our government, their far-reaching expansionist goals to redesign the entire region for their benefit using our military. Somehow we fell into the trap. How is it possible? 25 years of war, 25 years in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, all these countries, nobody wants them. It's been a full decade since we voted for Trump to repudiate those wars. It was nearly a decade before that people voted for Barack Obama to extricate us from those wars. It happens over and over again. And now we're in 2025. And given everything that was said about this second term, it'll be different this time, they said. Tulsi Gabbard is on the team. It'll be a golden age. He learned his lessons. He wants vengeance, they said. He wants vengeance against the deep state. It will be different this time. Where was the evidence for that? Where was the evidence at any point throughout the last year that it would have been different? And now, of all people, of all times and places, Donald Trump is the one to bomb Iran. Did you ever think you'd be saying those words? Donald Trump, no new wars. The president of peace, who humiliated Jeb Bush and ended the Bush dynasty and the Clinton dynasty. Did you ever think you would see that headline today in the New York Times? U.S. enters war with Iran. Here's the best part. Okay, it happened. We all know how it happened. They charged Trump, they convicted him, they set him up for 300 years in prison. Who comes to bail him out last year? Of course, it was the Zionists. After October 7th, 2023, the Jews in Israel and the Jews in America knew, and they were on the same page. Israel was going to terraform the Middle East, that on the other side of this regional conflict would be a completely new order. And we've seen how that has unfolded over the past 2 years. Assad is now gone. The Revolutionary Guard is out of Syria. Hezbollah is decimated. Now, of course, Israel's in a war with Iran. A decision was made after October 7th that a Republican president would be the one that would support this effort, more than the Democrats, more than a progressive like Kamala Harris, more than the Biden administration. And not only would a Republican, because the GOP is controlled by the Israel lobby, not only would a Republican president give the most support in the form of foreign aid and cover for the genocide in Gaza, and ultimately support for a joint operation in Iran, but more importantly, a Republican president would sell it to the American people. They would sell it. A Democrat war in Iran, do you think Republicans would be in favor of it like they are now? No. If Biden got reelected and was in a wheelchair going to war with Iran, because some say it's inevitable either way, and I probably agree with that. If Biden was in a wheelchair, or Kamala Harris, who never won the nomination fair and square, if either of them brought us to war in Iran, do you think anybody would support it? Democrats, Republicans? There might be riots in the streets. There might be protests on the college campuses. But wait, there can't be protests on the campuses because Trump has deported anybody that organizes protests against Israel. He's implementing the Esther Plan by the Heritage Foundation. And maybe Republicans would be opposing it. But wait, it's Trump. And nobody wants to go against Trump. Not the influencers, not the networks, not the congressmen and senators, although I don't think they're even tempted to, because they're all in on the take from Israel. What is so surprising, what's so shocking is not that this has happened. Israel has controlled the tempo and the ladder of escalation in this regional conflict for 60 years. since 1967, and especially in the past 25 years since the war in Iraq. That has not changed. That is not different. Maybe it was inevitable, given their influence over our media and our government and the way they drive affairs in that region, that we would end up in this situation. It happened. But what is so disturbing is that what should happen next is the entire United States, the American people, should be furious and outraged and standing up in one voice and saying, we do not want a war in Iran. Which is what we have, by the way, in case you missed the headlines. Some people are a little confused on this. But because it's Trump, because he is a Trojan horse, and I always said that was the worst effect. Better than Kamala? Certainly. Better domestic agenda? Marginally. But what makes him so dangerous is that he will take his entire base with him to support this war and deflate what could have been, what would have been an anti-war consensus and an awakening of a national consciousness against the influence of Israel, which brought us here. Instead, I see people on Twitter like Charlie Kirk and Matt Gaetz and Jack Posobiec and all the dissidents saying, well, you know, if we stop here, it's not really a war. They're saying, I don't think Trump wants a war in Iran. I don't think he wants a big, wide war in Iran. Hey, guess what? We're in a war with Iran. What else would you call this? We just bombed them. We just dropped 6 conventional bombs weighing 30,000 pounds that are nearly the size of a very small nuclear bomb on Iran's nuclear program. And this after we supported Israel's surprise attack, murdering their scientists, murdering their commanders, blowing up their airports, their capital, everything. And people say, if we go to war, I don't think Trump wants a war. We're in that war. And isn't it miraculous how that position has changed every single day over the past week and a half? 2 weeks ago, before the clouds came rolling in over the Middle East, they said no new wars. Trump will keep us out, they said. He's negotiating. Trump is going to make a deal with Iran. He's going to bend the Israelis over. That's what people were saying. They said that Trump and Netanyahu had a split. They broke up. Trump and Pete Hegseth aren't visiting Israel on his multi-stop visit to the Arabian Peninsula. They said Trump made peace with the Houthis without even notifying Israel. He's negotiating with Hamas to free an American captive. The rhetoric, they said, the rhetoric is so good, said Kurt Mills. Kurt Mills, the genius who said just trust Steve Witkoff and trust Trump because of their rhetoric, their framing of the issue. Idiot, dummy, fool, hello. You might be a nerd, but you're not smart. That was the first position. No new wars. Trump is going to navigate a way out of this. He's going to make a deal. He's working against the Israelis to resolve this with diplomacy. The second that Israel started dropping the bombs, it went from no new wars to, well, we should stay out of it. Remember? And of course, we're in it. We've been in it for a long time. They said, well, we should stay out of it. Then when we shot down Iran's missiles over Israel, people said, well, we should stay out of it offensively. Stay out of it, but not defensively. We're very much in it and we should be in it, but offensively, we shouldn't be in it. Then it went further and it said, well, once Trump said he was considering bombing Iran with American air power, they said, well, you know, hey, Trump always said he would destroy Iran's nukes. So, you know, if we got involved in that way, that's fine. Then when it became clear that that's what we would do, people said, hey, but it isn't regime change. It isn't boots on the ground. At least it isn't. And that's what they're saying tonight. America has bombed Iran. America's bombed their nuclear facilities with 6 massive bombs, struck 2 others with 30 missiles. And people are saying, well, but he doesn't want regime change. Well, but he doesn't want a wider war. Let's see what he does next. It doesn't matter. We're in a war. I'll tell you what's going to happen next. Iran will retaliate. What do you think is going to happen next? What happened after Israel bombed them last year? Twice. They retaliated. What happened when we attacked them 5 years ago when we killed Soleimani and attacked them in the Persian Gulf? They retaliated. What do you think they're going to do now? What do they have to do? At the minimum, there's a risk. They're going to be firing missiles at American bases. They might close the Strait of Hormuz. They might attack Saudi oil. They're certainly going to hit back at Israel. The Houthis will be closing the Red Sea by bombing commercial shipping there. We don't want a war. We're in one. Now the ball is out of our hands. It's in their court. We do not control the initiative anymore. It's up to them. What will Iran do next? It's now their decision. You think we're going to go in and bomb them? They're going to be racing towards a nuclear weapon now. You think they're going to make a deal? They're going to make peace with Israel and the United States now? No chance. There's no chance. I can't believe we're here having this conversation. It's shocking. So we'll see what happens next. Trump is giving his address in 15 minutes. We'll stay tuned and we'll watch that. In a minute, we'll take a look at the map and we'll discuss in a little bit greater detail what could be the next big steps. And I will say this, I'll say this before I say this. Obviously, this is a terrifying situation. We're in World War III. Look around you. We're at war with Russia. We're in a war with Russia in Ukraine, if it isn't clear already. We've been at war with Russia for 3 years, backing Ukraine in their ambitious attacks against Russian naval assets in the Black Sea, their surprise drone attack against Russia's strategic aircraft a few weeks ago. We are in a war with Russia. Now we're in a shooting war with Iran that will very quickly expand into the entire region. We're at war in Africa, where Russian and Chinese proxies are overthrowing French and American forces everywhere over minerals and trade routes and ports and things like that. In Taiwan, there are currently several Chinese aircraft carriers approaching the shore of Korea and Guam and Taiwan, and we have aircraft carriers forward deployed there as well. We're in this World War III. This is a very serious situation, and it's terrifying. Surely Americans will die as a result of the decision tonight, and it's Israel's fault. And that should weigh on everybody. With that being said, I predicted this, and I'm going to take a bit of a victory lap in the sense that I was vindicated, and I'll tell you why. 1 year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, I said that I would not vote for Trump. And I said I wasn't going to vote for Trump for exactly this reason. Would you like to know how I knew that this would be the case? Well, a big reason is because back in May of last year, after the Republican primary for the presidency was over, Nikki Haley dropped out of the race and visited Israel. Nikki Haley's a close friend of Miriam Adelson, who's a major donor from the Israel lobby, one of the biggest donors in the past 15, 20 years in the GOP, and in absolute terms, one of the biggest individual donors in nearly every cycle, her and her husband. Miriam Adelson, who's close with Nikki Haley, brokered a deal where Nikki Haley gave Trump her endorsement. She said she was surveying Israel on behalf of his campaign. Trump accepted the endorsement, hinted that Haley might be in his administration, and that is when Miriam Adelson gave a pledge to Donald Trump for $100 million for his reelection campaign. And that's when I knew. That's when I knew exactly what kind of deal was struck. Miriam Adelson cut the check, and Nikki Haley gave the endorsement and bowed out of the race, and she visited Israel because a deal was struck and a concession was given. And I said I didn't like that. And it just kept getting worse. Trump continued to insinuate that he might strike Iran, that he would bomb Iran's nuclear facilities, bought into this idea that Iran was trying to assassinate him. And in the event that that happened, we should wipe Iran off the map. And I got the uneasy feeling that Israel was plowing ahead based on their provocations against Iran in April and July of last year to orchestrate a crisis where the United States would be forced into a direct confrontation with Iran. And I said this very precisely and explicitly and openly last year. And do you know what people said about me? They said that for saying that, I was a Democrat plant. They said, you're telling us not to vote for the Republican candidate? You must be a Democrat. Are you with the Republicans or are you with the Democrats? And I said, neither. I didn't vote for Kamala. I didn't vote for Trump. I told my followers, stay at home, don't vote. But they said, you got a deal after January 6th, and the feds are making you go against Trump. If that's the case, why don't they fire me now? Right? Let's get Kash Patel to look into my file as an agent, and he can fire me now. They said he's a Fed, and they got him. They got the dirt on him to go against Trump. They said I'm a Democrat. They said I was deployed by the Democrat Party to spoil the election for Trump and to hurt him in the swing states. I said, I'm not a Democrat. I would like to vote for Trump. I said, but I want to know we're not going to war in Iran. If he says that, I'll vote for him. And people attacked me. They destroyed my reputation, humiliated me, mocked me. But the reason that I was right and they were wrong, the reason why 6 months, not even 5 months into this administration, we're at war with Iran and there's no mass deportations, the reason I knew that would happen is because I was watching. I was paying attention. I didn't get swept up in the propaganda. Now, the reason I say that, and I'm catching myself now, I'm not saying that to say I'm so smart. I'm saying that because this is an extraordinary lesson. And it's not a lesson that I'm smart and you're dumb, although that's part of the lesson. This is an extraordinary lesson for every American patriot, every American nationalist, every American dissident who is currently infiltrating politics. What we've seen over the past year, you can never forget. Last year, they said it was a frat bro uprising. It's a golden age. All this rhetoric, all this propaganda, and it came from the Zionists. Why was Ben Shapiro supporting Donald Trump? Why do you think he was? Because he wants mass deportations? Of course not. When everybody else was swept up in propaganda and rhetoric by people that you should have never trusted, loyalty to the Republican Party, loyalty to the interests that support the Republican Party, look at how that has paid off. The lesson is this. You must pay attention to these fundamental dynamics in politics. Follow the money. The Republican Party would have you believe Bronze Age pervert, Ben Shapiro, Joe Lonsdale, Peter Thiel and his network, Sovereign House, all these assholes, and Vance for that matter too, they would all have you believe that the problem is the left and the Democrats. Trump is better than Kamala. They would all have you believe that Israel really is our closest ally because the Palestinians, well, they're like the BLM of Israel. Remember that one? The BLM Hamasification of our universities is what they said. They said the same people that are criticizing Israel are with the left and BLM. The same people that don't want a genocide in Gaza that we pay for, the same people that don't want to get dragged into this Middle Eastern war, they said that's of the left. That's a creature of the left. That's a specimen of left-wing thinking and of our enemies and of brown people and non-white people in the third world. And people bought all that. They ate that shit up. And who was telling them that? Curtis Yarvin, a Jew, Bronze Age pervert, a Jew. They both get money from Peter Thiel, who works with Alex Karp at Palantir for the CIA, doing facial recognition in Gaza, and they're all Zionists. That's who was telling you this. I remember, and I will never get tired of telling this story. I was friends with a white, attractive Chad, high IQ guy who was going to an elite university, who came from money. This was elite human capital, suffice to say. And he took that bait, hook, line, and sinker. BAP guy, had a BAP brand, Bronze Age pervert stuff, Trump supporter. And we were talking, and I said, you can't support Trump. We're going to war in Iran. He said, I just don't see how that's going to happen. I said, I'll tell you how it's going to happen. Miriam Adelson cut him a check. Israel is going to finish off Hezbollah, and then they're going to force us into a confrontation with Iran. They're going to continue to provoke and catalyze them as they did throughout 2024, and they're going to create a crisis where we have to intervene. And I said, I just don't see that happening. And now here we are in another forever war that puts America last. There's a lesson in this. It is not about right and left. It really isn't. There is no the left. There is no Democrats. There are Americans and there are Israelis. There are Americans and there are the Jews that support this. These people they are responsible for creating the situation here. October 7th was fake. They stood down. They saw it coming. They knew it was happening and they stood down so they could have a crisis to launch a war against everybody in Gaza, in Hezbollah, in Syria, against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and now against Iran. They provoked Iran repeatedly. With this outcome in mind, Trump probably wanted peace in his heart of hearts, maybe, although we don't know that. He was pursuing a deal, at least at one point. But the Israelis have drawn him into this fight because they initiated the strikes on Iran. They pressured Trump from the inside. Mike Waltz, our national security advisor, was working for Netanyahu, pushing Trump to war. John Ratcliffe is AIPAC's man inside the White House. He's the director of the CIA. He and Susie Wiles of Florida were pushing him into the war. We're in another war because of these right-wing Jews and Israelis that are our true closest ally because they're nationalists. They're not our friends. Yoram Hazony, Curtis Yarvin, Costin Alamaru, Jonathan Keeperman, JD Vance, Miriam Adelson, Rubio, all these people are not your friends. Americans will die for Israel because they betrayed our country. And you want to talk about the left. You want to talk about better than Kamala. Shut the fuck up forever. Shut the fuck up forever now. Anybody that did not see this coming is either too stupid or they're in on it. Either way, they can never be trusted again. And the people today that are trying still to sell you that this is not a big deal should be disregarded forever. People that are on Twitter now saying, this is serious, but let's see if it turns into a bigger deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal. This isn't like Syria in 2018. This isn't like Soleimani in 2020. This is a totally unnecessary provocation against Iran. This was on Israel's wish list. This was the first tile on the bingo card of the Israel lobby for 30 years. And the No New Wars president delivered it. And you bought it because he's a Republican. You bought it because of this propaganda, because Peter Thiel made a move in 2022 to buy up everything. And from NatCon, run by the dual citizen Yoram Hazony, to Sovereign House, run by future Moldovan citizen and Nick Allen, a couple of pro-Israel Jews, to Passage Press, run by the Jew Jonathan Keeperman, publishing The Jews, Curtis Yarvin, and Costin Alamaru, who hosted their big DC party, and all the crypto adjacent groups that they're affiliated with. From one thing to the next, Red Scare, All of it. They bought it to turn it out to support this war. And that's why dissidents that should have been Groypers, dissidents that would have been, should have been, white identitarians, white nationalists, Israel critical, counter-Semitic, they're now pro-Trump Republican glazers defending a fucking war in Iran. That's how it happened. Because they convince you to be more concerned about a black person working at the DMV than a CIA contractor, Peter Thiel, and the Israel lobby. And you fell for it again. So now we'll see what the president says. In 3 minutes, he's going to give his speech. But this is a lesson to everybody, to the young people, to the old people. It is what it is. To the young people. I'm talking now to the younger crowd. I'm talking to the teenagers. Pause. I'm talking to the 20-somethings. All of you young white men, and other men for that matter, all of you patriotic young men that love America and that love Jesus Christ, listen and listen well. We have been at war for a quarter of a century for Israel, for an antichrist state that wants Americans to die to pave the way for their new empire and their third temple. Listen and listen well. They have deceived us again. They deceived you. We've witnessed it in real time over the past year. This is what it means to be America first. Fighting this, being aware of this. That's the ultimate priority. For those people that are just getting into politics, you're a college Republican, you're inside the administration, you're in a congressional office, you're in state politics. If you are one of those young America first men, Trump sold you out to the Israel lobby. We're fighting a war that we should have never been involved in. George W. Bush wouldn't even bring us into this war. If you believe in the paleocons and Pat Buchanan, he's been talking about it for 35 years. This is how they operate. There is no substitute for victory. People said we would elect Trump and trust the plan. You can't trust the plan. You can't trust these people. They said we would elect Trump. It's better than Kamala. This isn't horseshoes. It doesn't matter how close you get if they're working for a foreign lobby. People said we'll elect Trump and then we'll fight that battle after the election. You see anybody fighting right now? You see Charlie Kirk fighting the president on this? He's doing tricks on it. He's doing reverse cowgirl with his shoes on. Glazing the president right now. Whoa, he brilliantly let us out of this one. He led us right into it on behalf of Israel. People said we'd elect Trump and then we'd battle it out in the administration. We'd infiltrate. How'd that go for Dan Caldwell? Huh? Resigned in disgrace within months with that trusting round face of his. How did that go? Kurt Mills from American Conservative, he was being told right up until the fucking bombs dropped that everything was going according to plan and the posters and patriots are in control because he's got a buddy in the National Security Council. Well, guess what? He don't run the National Security Council. Israel does. So listen to this and listen well. If we are being outmaneuvered politically at every step of the way, as long as the Israelis are in control of the administration and pulling the levers of power, nothing matters. There's no substitute for victory. We have to take our own side. It's 10 o'clock. I'm going to transition us over here. We'll look on YouTube. We'll see if Trump starts immediately. Let me get set up here. I'll have it up. I'm going to keep going until Trump starts speaking, but I do just want to get this open here so that we don't miss it. All right. Let me get my headphones on too. But that is the lesson. And in some ways, maybe this was necessary. In some ways, it might be a blessing. If and only if all of the young patriots that did support Trump, listen, you know what? I was young once too. I still am young. I supported Trump in his first term, and I was surprised when Trump failed us. I went to D.C. in 2018. I met with guys from the admin. I said, I'm trusting the plan. Is Trump doing 4D chess? Are we winning? They looked at each other and they laughed in my face. They said, it's a joke. They said, people that were the most loyal aren't getting hired. They said, the whole administration's infiltrated. Oh, here we go. All right, well, this is it.
Thank you very much. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel. And God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Unreal. More threats. God bless Israel, he says. Awesome. Well, I'm just glad Israel is safe. Americans may die. We're involved in another war. But hey, as long as Israel is safe, well, there's your 5-minute speech. What a joke. What a sick joke. And people said it was going to be quick. Well, we'll get into what's going to happen next. There's the president's speech. Now, we don't know what the damage is. They say that the facility at Fordow has been destroyed, but that has not been independently verified yet. Now the question is what Iran does next. Will Iran retaliate? I don't know why they wouldn't. The United States says we're prepared to carry out more strikes. It will be easier. There's still plenty of targets. So if Iran retaliates, and they almost certainly will, against U.S. bases in the region, of which there are many, in Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, the Emirates, Qatar, elsewhere, then the United States will go back in and carry out more strikes. And certainly, this is not the last word for Israel either. Bibi Netanyahu says that he's giving a speech shortly after Trump. I guess I'll pull that up now. We'll see if we can get that. I don't know if it's going to happen right away, but we'll be watching for that. But clearly, this is not the end. This is obviously not the end of the conflict. We just bombed Iran. That was just like last week when Israel did their first strike. That's only the first part. And now Iran will get their chance to retaliate. And we'll take a look at the map here. We'll give you a little bit of an idea of what that might look like. So the United States has just bombed Iran. We bombed Isfahan, which is here. Isfahan and Natanz, which is up here. We bombed those two facilities with missiles from submarines. And then we bombed Fordo, which is near Qum. And we dropped bunker-busting bombs on Qum from B-2 stealth bombers, probably from Diego Garcia, which is out here in the British Indian Territory. Although some people believe we did it from Guam, which is out here in the Pacific. Because American stealth bombers first went to Hawaii, and then they went to Guam, and then they kept moving west. And they have the range to hit Iran from all the way out in the Pacific. So that was the strike. Now, Iran has said that if the United States bombs Iran, they are going to attack our soldiers. And we've got soldiers all over the region. We've got them in Baghdad, over here. We have them in eastern Syria, in the desert around here. We have them in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar. We have them in the United Arab Emirates. We have some in Riyadh. So we have American soldiers very close to Iran. Now, I said this on the show this week. If you notice anything about this map, you'll see Israel is far away from Iran. Israel's all the way over here. So it's across Iraq and Jordan or Iraq and Syria, thousands of kilometers away. But the American soldiers are right there. Baghdad is right next to Iran. Kuwait is right next to Iran. The bases in the Gulf are right across the Persian Gulf. What that means is that the missiles that are launched by Iran against Israel are easier to shoot down because we can detect them sooner and we have more time to target them because they're further away, so it takes longer for them to arrive. The missiles that are launched potentially against an American base will have virtually no time to detect them, will have virtually no time to intercept them. What's more, Israel has a complex missile defense system. They have our missile defense, which comes in the form of Patriot missile batteries, the THAAD system, our destroyers, fighter jets, but they also have their series of air defense systems, the Iron Dome, the David Sling, and the Arrow 2 and 3. The United States does not have a complex web of air defense on every one of their bases. Our bases are spread out across the entire region. There's many of them, and not all of them have a robust missile defense system. And so what that means is that if you thought that we're going to bomb Iran and maybe they retaliate, but it's not going to be a big deal because we'll just shoot them down, we are more vulnerable than Israel. Our assets, our hardware is far more vulnerable. It'll be easier for Iran to strike us than it is for them to strike Israel. Almost certainly they will. What's more, the Iranian regime is still in place. What is exactly going to happen next here? The Trump administration said after Israel struck that Iran still has an opportunity to negotiate and give up their centrifuges. Well, why would they have done it a week ago? The United States was conducting diplomacy with Iran, and they knew the entire time that Israel was going to sabotage the diplomacy, and they were alerted in advance that Israel would bomb Iran. And then the United States said, well, come back to the negotiating table and let's make a deal. Why would Iran come back to the table if the first negotiations were a ruse? If they were essentially a ploy to get Iran to lower their defenses so they could be attacked. Then the president said, not only should you come and negotiate in good faith, but you should give up your nuclear deterrent. Why would they do that? Why would they ultimately capitulate? Once again, now Trump has bombed Iran. Trump has launched airstrikes, dropping 6 bunker buster bombs, missile strikes. Now he says Iran must surrender or else there'll be more strikes. Even after Trump said throughout the week he wants to negotiate, Iran wants to negotiate. He says they have another opportunity. They need to negotiate. I'll decide in 2 weeks. I don't want a war. Now they're going to negotiate. Now they're going to surrender. What Trump has just done is he has made it so that Iran is in survival mode. Now the entire country and the regime are in peril. The idea that Iran, with its back against the wall, being hammered by Israel and the United States, bombing their nuclear program, now they're just going to give up. It's totally outside their national character. It's totally outside their national interest. They've been forced against the wall into a survival situation. Now they will do anything possible just to ensure the continuity of the regime. And probably they have a significant amount of radioactive material, nuclear material, that's not even stored at Natanz and Fordo. That's the other big part of this equation. The big question surrounding these strikes was not only would we be able to attack without spillover into other countries or retaliation or deepening the conflict. The other question was, will the bombs even do the job? Well, Iran has the scientists. They have the know-how. They still have probably a lot of enriched uranium. And somewhere they probably have more centrifuges. That means that their nuclear program, although it has been damaged and it will take months to put back together, it is still intact. They still have the ability to produce a nuclear bomb on some kind of a timeline. What will almost certainly happen next is that the Israelis will say it's not good enough. The Israelis will say, we still have not resolved the threat because they've got additional sites, or Fordo wasn't completely destroyed. The scientists are still alive. What's more, since the nuclear program has been temporarily put offline, now Iran is completely vulnerable. And Trump said that after these strikes, it will now be easier to strike against Iran. Other targets will be easier. That implies that toppling the regime, going after the missile launch positions, other strategic sites, it's something they're considering. It's probably something they will do over the course of the next week. So almost certainly this war will continue. For those that think, oh, it's just one little strike, it's not a big deal, almost certainly this will continue. And it will continue for the same reason that it has gotten this far, why it started in the first place, which is that Israel is driving the conflict forward. They desire regime change. That is their ultimate goal. Now that Fordo has been disabled or maybe partially destroyed, now certainly Israel will feel emboldened to carry out more strikes, maybe potentially carry out a decapitation strike against the supreme leader. Who knows? Now we're in it. Now we have bought in and now we own this. And so some of the things that could happen, like we said, is that Iran could attack American bases in the Middle East. Americans will die. If that happens, the United States will certainly intervene. Further, that is. Another possibility is that Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz. This is the Strait of Hormuz. This is the narrowest part that separates the Persian Gulf from the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea. This is where all the oil flows from Iran, from the Gulf countries, from Saudi Arabia. This is where all the oil and natural gas comes from. It comes from the Gulf. It comes from Saudi's eastern province. It comes from the coast of Iran. All of that flows through the Strait of Hormuz to be shipped out to China from Iran for the most part, but also to all the other countries. Iran could use their navy to mine and blockade the Strait of Hormuz. If that happens, global oil prices are going to get jacked up because it's going to effectively shut down a big part of the oil trade. The other thing that could happen is that the Houthis, which control northwestern Yemen, this portion of Yemen, they could renew their operations in the Red Sea. They have been attacking commercial shipping for the past year and a half, ever since October 7th, inside the Red Sea and in the Bar al-Mandeb Strait, which is the narrowest part. That's the choke point between the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. They could relaunch their campaign on commercial shipping. We won't be able to stop them, and that'll choke off all trade through the Red Sea. In addition, not only can Iranian forces bomb American bases, but so can the Houthis. So can Hezbollah in Lebanon, which is in the south of Lebanon and in the suburbs of Beirut. The Shiite militias inside of Iraq, they will be attacking America. They may storm America's embassy in Baghdad. That might happen in other countries too. And Iraqi militias that are aligned with Iran may attack American bases. The last option that they have is they could attack Saudi oil. This is something that happened throughout Yemen's war with Saudi Arabia. The Houthis or the Iranians or other groups could rise up or attack Saudi's oil fields in the eastern province. That's another thing that they could do to put pressure on the United States. But this is why this is not just about Iran. It would be bad enough if it was just about Iran. Iran is a big country with, as we all know now, 90 million people. It's got 1 million soldiers. It's got drone factories, missile factories. It's got thousands of ballistic missiles. Attacking Iran by itself and the prospect of regime change is a huge deal. It's a far bigger deal than attacking Iraq or Syria. And if you just look at the map, Iran is much bigger. As a country, it's bigger than Iraq and Syria. Its population has many multiples. Its economy is far bigger. Its military is far more sophisticated and bigger. But of course, it's not just about Iran. If it were just about Iran, that would be a big deal by itself. But this is now spilling over into the entire region. It could draw in proxies from Yemen, from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq. It could involve targets inside Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the Emirates, Saudi Arabia. It is going to involve international shipping and the global oil trade at two of these major waterways, not just the Red Sea, but also the Persian Gulf. And if you look on the planet where this is situated, this is in the middle of the world, obviously. So this is shutting down a significant portion of the global economy. If they shut down the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz and the airspace is all closed down, this has an effect on everybody. Now, the unspoken option that Iran has, of course, is that they could launch attacks inside the United States. Or better yet, the Israelis, posing as the Iranians, could launch attacks inside the United States on behalf of Iran. They could do it inside Europe. That's why we say it's World War III. Russia and China are allied with Iran. We're at war with Russia in Ukraine. We're at war with Russia in Western Africa and the Sahel region. We have a military buildup in the Pacific, and so does China, and that's concerning Taiwan. North Korea is allied with them. And then you're going to have a conflict all over the Middle East. That's why we say this is now a world war. That's the risk of world war. So the questions now that we have to answer over the coming days are, what was the damage to Fordo? Was it completely destroyed or partially destroyed? Has Iran been able to protect or preserve any amount of highly enriched uranium? Will their nuclear program go on at some kind of third site where they can enrich uranium? Have they moved their stockpile of uranium somewhere else? That's the first question. The first question is, will Iran's nuclear program survive? The second question is, what does Iran do next? Do they attack U.S. bases? Do they close the Strait of Hormuz? What do its proxies do? Are there terror attacks in the United States? Do they retaliate against Israel? And then maybe a third question is, what does Israel do? Does Israel take advantage of the situation? And again, the reason that we got here, evaluating everybody's strategic objectives, Israel wants regime change in Iran. That has always been their goal ever since the Islamic Revolution in '79. Make no mistake about it. Israel, on some level, does not care about the nuclear program. That's not their primary concern. Fundamentally, Israel wants to topple the government in Iran. That is why Iran has a nuclear program. Iran has a nuclear program because Israel wants to topple them. Now, because Iran has a nuclear program, that is why the United States is concerned about them. Because the United States has a doctrine against the proliferation of nuclear weapons. That's the trifecta. Israel wants to topple Iran. Iran is protecting itself by having a nuclear program and a proxy network and missile factories. Primarily, it is their nuclear program, which is why the United States has intervened. And Israel knows that. That's why they play up the threat of the nuclear program and embellish the risk that it poses to the United States, or even the reality of whether Iran has weaponized or desires weaponization at all. So now that the United States has disarmed Iran and its nuclear program, that clears the way for Israel to do what it always wanted to do, which is to knock down the regime. So that is really the question. And the question is, how does Iran play its hand now? It has been made defenseless. The United States is involved. It is now a direct offensive partner of Israel, and realistically it already was, but now they drop bombs. Does Iran retaliate against the United States? If they didn't, there's no deterrence. If Iran lets itself get bombed and does nothing, it probably invites more aggression because it says that you can drop bombs on us and we will do nothing. We're afraid. If Iran retaliates, then America will avenge the deaths of American soldiers. And this is why in 2020, after the United States assassinated Soleimani, Iran took a middle approach. They responded to American bases, but they heavily telegraphed it in such a way that the United States could evacuate and make preparations, and so Americans didn't die when Iran retaliated. That was a middle ground where you establish deterrence by retaliating, but you don't invite more aggression by killing anybody. Now, I don't think they could do that because this was a bigger deal. Bombing Iranian soil with American bombers, their nuclear program, that's a much bigger deal than assassinating Soleimani on foreign soil at an airport. So I think there has to be a bigger response. Additionally, even if they don't kill Americans, the fact of retaliating will invite more aggression either way. Whether they kill people or not, whether they injure people, how many people died, doesn't matter. America's going to go back in. So how does Iran reply to this escalation? There's really no good options. Additionally, let's say that Iran doesn't retaliate at all. Israel will probably take advantage of what the United States just did, and they will keep pushing the envelope. More assassination strikes, more attacks on strategic infrastructure, and Iran will keep fighting with Israel. Now, what Trump said during the statement is that Iran has to surrender. And I would imagine that what that means is not only that they stop, or rather that they don't retaliate against the United States, but that they cease retaliating against Israel as well. And so if the fight between Iran and Israel continues, which it surely will because Israel will keep it up, then probably the United States will intervene in that scenario too. So this is how this is going to unfold. And almost all scenarios point to more fighting. The conflict will continue to widen, meaning it will expand outside of Iran, and our involvement will deepen. Make no mistake about it, we'll be back. We'll be bombing Iran more. And when all is said and done, probably the Iranian regime will be toppled and replaced with some sort of Western puppet. And nobody can ever say again, it wasn't a real war, it wasn't regime change, it was just a nuclear program. This is just indefensible. There's no defense for this. And to get back to what I was saying before, I mean, look, the big picture, what happened tonight happened. It is what it is. We're in a war with Iran. We've been at war with Iran. We're there. We are there. It's a done deal. What needs to be said now that we're in it, is to never forget who is responsible. When Americans die, and they will, remember who is responsible. Israel dragged us into the conflict, and they did it with their American Jewish allies in the United States. The blood is on their hands. We've been drawn in by them. That's the big picture. And for anybody out there that's defending this in any kind of way, it's just one strike. This isn't a big deal. This is like other strikes in the past. It isn't. Everybody who has been paying attention, anybody that is patriotic, anybody that knows what's going on knows. This is a really big deal. We're not getting out of this anytime soon. And anybody that's trying to convince you otherwise is trying to sell you. These people like Charlie Kirk and others, they're trying to tell you, no, this is brilliant. This isn't regime change. This isn't boots on the ground. This isn't another Iraq war, and here's why. They can never, ever be trusted. Ever. Because now we know who they are. Pay close attention. Who is on the side of America here and who's on the side of Israel? Who's on the side of President Israel? God bless Israel. Israel's safer tonight, etc. Who risked American lives? Who risked a World War III and nuclear exchange for the sake of Israel? Who's defending that? Who's in favor of that? And who is opposed to it on behalf of America? Pay very close attention and never forget. This is one of those moments. This is like, where were you on 9/11? This is like, where were you when JFK got shot? This is one of those moments. Where were you when we started the war against Saddam Hussein? This is a big deal. So, I wish I could say I'm surprised, but I'm not. We knew this was coming. I predicted it. They called me a Democrat. They called me a Fed. They said I was a third worldist. They said that'll never happen. America's not going to war with Iran. Nothing ever happens. Well, they were wrong. They either got tricked by the Jews or they're in on it. Either way, they can't be trusted. It's America first. It's America first until we die. It's Jesus Christ first until we die. Never forget what side we're on. We're on the side of European civilization, European white civilization. The Romans, the Greeks, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, the German Empire, the Renaissance. We are on the side of European civilization. We are on the side of Jesus Christ and his church. The Jews put him on the cross. Never forget that. And we're on the side of the United States of America. That's what side we're on. I'm not a conservative. I'm not one of these, I'm not in favor of Western kind and Western this and that. I'm not part of a U.S.-Israel alliance, Judeo-Christianity, nationalism for all nations, like they say. It's not even about the right and the left. Fuck the right and the left. It's not about right and left. It's about, are you with our civilization? Are you with Jesus? Are you with America? Those are the questions that matter. Israel's against all of them. Israel's against America. Israel is against the church. They're against Christ. They're against our civilization. They always have been. So that's that. And by the way, one other thing before I'm going to wrap this up soon. I want to play this clip. So some people are passing around this report. They say that JD Vance said privately that Israel's drawing us into the war. Make no mistake about it. And I'm going to tell you this now, and you better listen. I was right about this a year ago. I was right about a lot of things. I've been on the money for 10 years. Now listen to what I'm telling you now, because this is the next deception. There was this big report out today. I'll pull it up, actually. There's the story they're pushing now, and this is the most important thing from this stream. Mark my words. You want another prediction 3 years in advance? Here it is. There's a report being passed around this week, today. It says, during a call, Vice President JD Vance pushed back, saying the United States should not be directly involved and suggesting the Israelis would drag the country into war. Make no mistake about it, this is a planted story. JD Vance is going to run in 2028. He wants to be the president. He is going to run in 2028. Trump is a lame duck. Vance is the vice president. He is the heir apparent and the successor. Vance knows the base is going to hate this. He is positioning himself in advance of the strikes as an opponent. He stood right behind Trump, and you just saw it. He will be with the president. He's been with the president. But he says in this report that has been planted in the press, oh, I'm against it. The Israelis are dragging me into the war. And the shills that supported Trump last year and said he's not going to take us to war in Iran, they're all passing this around and saying, see, Vance is based. This is what he said last year. This was the day that he was nominated as the vice president. This was the same day at the convention that he was announced as the vice presidential nominee. Listen to this.
The most important part, I think, of the Trump doctrine in foreign policy is you don't commit America's troops unless you really have to. But when you do, you punch and you punch hard. I think that's the way that you respect America's brave men and women who are serving. Now, let me say something about...
When you say that, does that, like, for example, how President Trump beat the caliphate? It was overwhelming force, and it was done pretty fast.
How President Trump beat the caliphate, beat ISIS, which people said literally couldn't be done, and he did it in a matter of months. But also Iran, Sean. A lot of people recognize that we need to do something with Iran, but not these weak little bombing runs. If you're going to punch the Iranians, you punch them hard, and that's what he did when he took out Soleimani. By the way, that action, people said that it would lead to broader war. It actually brought peace. It actually checked the Iranians and slowed them down a little bit.
Clearly. So this is the next thing. You want another prediction from the guy that was right about Israel and the Jews, the guy that was right about race and IQ and mass migration and the Groyper War and all of it. And now this. You want another prediction hot off the presses? This is a planted story. He's going to run. And these people on Twitter are being paid to shill him. They are on his team already. JD Vance is the protege of Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel hooked him up from beginning until now. JD Vance met Peter Thiel in law school, and Thiel has been his patron ever since. Peter Thiel got him his first job in Silicon Valley. Peter Thiel got him a job at his venture capital firm. When JD Vance started his own venture capital firm, Peter Thiel and his founders fund were the first big contributors in the first round of funding. Peter Thiel brokered a truce between Vance and Trump and got Vance the Trump endorsement when he ran for Senate. Peter Thiel donated $30 million to Masters and Vance, $15 million to Vance when he ran for Senate in 22. It was the biggest outside contribution in the history of the U.S. Senate. And Peter Thiel is a CIA contractor with Palantir. Peter Thiel founded Palantir with Alex Karp and the CIA. So Vance is controlled. And by the way, I'll see if I can find it right now off the cuff. Let me see if I can locate it. Give me 1 minute. Oh, I can't even get this article because it's, well, whatever. You can look this up later. Somebody can send me the link. In 2017, after Trump won the election, JD Vance met with David Frum and all of his other patrons, maybe Peter Thiel was there too, to discuss a run for the presidency. This was in 2017. JD Vance was elected to the Senate in 2022. In 2017, when Vance was a never-Trumper, he held a meeting a week after Trump's inauguration in D.C. He invited Frum, who was a neocon speechwriter for George Bush, and other people, and they said, how am I going to become the president after Trump won and I was a never-Trumper? This is what he's always wanted, going back like 15 years. Even maybe longer than that. He's been groomed for the presidency by the CIA, by groups like Palantir, which are infiltrated by Israel. And when Trump bows out, Vance is going to be the successor. They are planting this story to say, oh, you know, Vance wasn't in favor of this hugely unpopular war. That is positioning. And people are being paid through Peter Thiel to shill for Vance. He's an investor in Polymarket. He's an investor in Rumble. He's an investor in all these different groups, Sovereign House, Passage Press, every one of these things, you name it, he's involved in it. And that's why none of them will say anything negative about Vance. And they will push the story to say he was based, he was opposed to the war. They planted the story. And never forget that a year ago, he volunteered that Trump should bomb Iran. He wasn't even asked about it. This interview was a year ago. This was at the convention. This was July 2024 when he received the nomination. Hours after it was announced, he says, we need to bomb Iran.
How President Trump beat the caliphate. It was overwhelming force, and it was done pretty fast.
How President Trump beat the caliphate, beat ISIS, which people said literally couldn't be done, and he did it in a matter of months. But also Iran, Sean. A lot of people recognize that we need to do something with Iran, but not these weak little bombing runs. If you're going to punch the Iranians, you punch them hard, and that's what he did when he took out Soleimani. By the way, that action...
So he volunteered that. Sean Hannity brought up the caliphate. Vance came in and said, also Iran, we can't just do a little bombing run. We need to really knock him out. Here's the article about Vance. I'm going to pull it up here. Wendell sent it to me. Shout out to Wendell. Let me see. I'm going to have to just literally type the link. All right. All right, here it is. Let me see. Do I have it actually? Here it is. This is from David Frum. Let's see. Trump's electoral college victory complicated the calculation. Oh, here we go. Before the 2016 election, Vance's future political path looked straightforward. He would await the expected Trump defeat and then emerge as a next-generation Republican savior, a candidate who could speak from his origins in Appalachia to the suburbs of Columbus, all while preserving his connections to his donors in Silicon Valley. Obviously, that's a big deal with Palantir, with Elon Musk, with the rest of them. Trump's electoral college victory complicated that calculation. Some Democrats wooed Vance to change parties. Obama's guru, David Axelrod, had Vance as a guest on his podcast a month after Vance's Times article was published. More plausible was a path for Vance as leader of the internal Republican opposition to Trump. About a week after the inauguration in 2017, Vance invited me and a dozen other anti-Trump conservatives to a quiet meeting in a downtown Washington, D.C. conference room to discuss ways forward about the Trump predicament. That meeting was off the record, but Vance subsequently emailed participants to alert us that he himself had spoken to a reporter about it. Among the topics was considered, could any good come from the Trump administration? How outspoken should we be in opposition? The meeting did not reach conclusions, but it didn't need to. The unspoken but widely understood agenda looked further into the future. We were present at the creation of a Vance for President campaign that might go into operation sometime in the late 2020s or early 2030s. Okay? So Vance was groomed by Peter Thiel, by David Frum. He was groomed to be the next generation Republican leader who's super moderate, but Trump spoiled that because Trump came in as a nativist and a populist and all that. When Trump won and Vance was a never-Trumper, it seemed like he didn't have a future. So they got together and said, well, we're going to try this out. They said, we'll have Vance being the internal opposition to Trump. They said the plausible path was for Vance to lead the internal Republican opposition. And that's what he did throughout 2017. That's what he tried to do. He was very critical of Trump. Then he realized Trump wasn't going anywhere. And that's when he rallied back to Trump's side. And that's where Peter Thiel introduced him to Trump in Mar-a-Lago in 2022 to get his endorsement. Do you see how this guy's being? He doesn't have any real beliefs. He's not pro-Trump. He's not one of us. His inherent loyalty is to Silicon Valley, always was, always has been, and to the neocons. He thought he was going to have this run. Trump comes in out of nowhere and wins, Vance tries to be the opposition. It doesn't work. Then he submits, joins up in the ticket. Elon, Tucker, Peter Thiel make the call. They get Trump to pick him. Now he's positioning himself by saying, oh, I'm against the war in Iran. That's the next step, guys. So anyway, you want to know how you cannot fall for it again? Pay attention to this. You're going to fall for it again. I see people already falling for it again. They're saying, oh, but Vance said no. That's called a planted story. That's positioning. So anyway, these are the big takeaways from tonight. You want to know, we covered the U.S. war with Iran a year ago. I feel tired of talking about it because I've been talking about it for a year. You want the story from 3 years in the future? Today, it's this. You want to see the crystal ball that I have for the next 3 years? It's this. Pay attention. That's the next big one that you're going to fall for. So anyway, that is the U.S. strike on Iran. I'm going to take a look and see if Bibi Netanyahu has spoken yet. I'm going to Google it on, or search it up on Twitter first. And then we're going to wrap up this stream. This was an emergency broadcast. Here we go. Yeah, we do have Netanyahu's speech. We'll watch this. Then we'll get out of here.
Iran's nuclear. Congratulations, President Trump. Your bold decision to target Iran's nuclear facilities with the awesome and righteous might of the United States will change history. In Operation Rising Lion, Israel has done truly amazing things. But in tonight's action against Iran's nuclear facilities, America has been truly unsurpassed. It has done what no other country on earth could do. History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace. President Trump and I often say, peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. President Trump, I thank you. The people of Israel thank you. The forces of civilization thank you. God bless America. God bless Israel. And may God bless our unshakable alliance, our unbreakable faith.
Great. I'm going to post on Twitter. I'm going to post that Vance video because we got to get that going. We can't have... I'm going to put this out right now. Here he is, the day. All right, I just tweeted about Vance. I also want to get into a little... I have a ton of viewers. I might as well keep going. We got like 62,000 viewers. That's crazy. You know, everybody wants to watch the stream because I call this one so right. So we'll spend a little bit more time. I'll go for maybe another 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'll get out of here. And I'll be live on Monday. I'll give full coverage on Monday. But just to get into the history a little bit here, for those that are just joining us, for those that haven't been paying attention, we have to talk about a few different tracks here. I'm going to give you a really thorough rundown right now on how we got here. For everybody that's just tuning in, we have a huge live audience right now, 62,000 viewers. I'm sure it's the #1 stream, maybe anywhere, that's covering this conflict. While I have you all here, let me explain how we got in this conflict with Iran. We'll go all the way back to the very beginning, okay? And we'll explain a few critical tracks here to explain this. And the tracks are as follows. 1, Israel's wars against its neighbors. 2, the arms race in the Middle East. These things are deeply related, but these are 2 separate tracks. They're inextricably connected, but they are related. Israel's wars in the region and the arms race. The third track, I guess it's related to their wars with their neighbors, but it's October 7th and everything that has happened since. So we'll start with the first track, and all these things are running parallel with each other. The first track is Israel's wars with its neighbors. We have to create an entirely different narrative to understand the United States war with Iran, because the prevailing narrative, the mainstream narrative, goes something like this. Iran is a radical, religious, zealot regime. It's run by fanatics. They want to kill Israel and kill Americans because they're anti-Semitic and they hate us. They believe in Islam above all else. They're willing to sacrifice the nation of Iran. They're racing towards a nuclear device so they can deploy it and kill all the Jews in Israel and destroy America. That's the prevailing narrative. And so under that narrative, with that in mind, well, we have to prevent them from acquiring a bomb by any means necessary. This was totally within America's self-interest. It's America first to disarm Iran. That makes perfect sense. But to begin to unravel that narrative, you really need to go all the way back, because that narrative, just like the narrative about Bashar al-Assad, just like the narrative about Gaddafi, just like the narrative about Saddam Hussein, it's starting in the middle of the story. It's starting smack in the middle of it, where Iran has this nuclear program. They won't give it up. Why won't they give it up? We have to disarm them. You have to start at the very beginning. You have to go back to the start. And the start is that Israel declares independence in 1948. And they declare it out of the Mandate of Palestine. This entire region was British territory. After World War I ended in the early 20th century, Turkey's empire was split up between the French and the British. The French got Lebanon and Syria. The British got Israel and Jordan. And so the area that would become the modern state of Israel and Palestine and Jordan was called the Mandate of Palestine. You had modern Israel and Transjordan, now what we call Jordan, both under the control of the British Empire. The Zionists had Jewish people moving there throughout the 20s, 30s, and 40s. The early Zionist movement that wanted to fill up Palestine with Jews, ultimately they wanted Jordan too, some of them. They were called revisionist Zionists. But all the early Zionists wanted the Jews to settle in the land of Israel. And in order to get Jews to settle there, they terrorized them. They created anti-Semitic hoaxes in Europe. They created anti-Semitic hoaxes in Iraq, in the broader Middle East, to try to convince world Jewry that the only place that they would be safe is in a country of their own, in Israel, and to go and stake out this project where they were building farms and kibbutzes and cities, and they were going to populate the state of Israel and create their own nation. After World War II, and we're skipping ahead a little bit, 1948, they declare their independence, and they start massacring Palestinians. They start killing Palestinians, driving them from their land. They try to take as much as possible. And a coalition of every Middle Eastern country declares war on them. None of the Middle Eastern countries accept them as a state, except for Turkey. But Turkey is an Arab. At that time, Turkey was secular, and Turkey arguably is not really part of the Middle East. Turkey recognizes them right away. But Egypt and Syria, being the big players at the time, declare war on Israel. So does Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. They all declare war on Israel. They all go in. And they fight to a stalemate. The United States implements a ceasefire, and so do some of the other players. But while there's a ceasefire in Israel, American Jews inside the United States and in Europe are smuggling weapons to Israel. You see, after World War II, only the United States had the atomic bomb. But in terms of arms races, you have light arms trafficking, like machine guns and things like that, ammunition. And American Jewish gangsters, American Jewish businessmen, and other Jews in Europe, they're trafficking weapons to this early state of Israel to build up their military capability. This is where the arms race starts. You see how these things are parallel? They're two tracks. In 1948, there's an Arab-Israel war, the first of its kind. It's fought to a stalemate. There's a ceasefire. During the ceasefire, you have the beginnings of the arms race, which is U.S. smugglers, Jewish smugglers, businessmen, gangsters, even politicians. They're smuggling light arms from World War II into Israel to help them defeat Egypt and Syria. And eventually they roll them back. In 1956, there's another Arab-Israel war. The president of Egypt, Nasser, takes over the country. He's a nationalist. He's against British occupation and colonization of Egypt. He nationalizes the Suez Canal, which is this all-important waterway that connects the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea. So Nasser, the president of Egypt, nationalizes the Suez. The British and the French want the Suez Canal back under their control. But the United States doesn't want them to intervene, and they don't want to piss off the United States. So they work with Israel to fabricate a false pretext for Israel to invade Egypt and seize control of the Suez from the Egyptians. The Israelis claim that Egypt was preparing for war, that they're harassing them in the Gulf of Tiran. Among other things, there's a military buildup in Egypt. So Israel, with the support of the British and the French, invades Egypt to take the Suez Canal. The United States comes in under Dwight Eisenhower, and at that time, the United States regime is trying to have a balanced approach towards the Arabs in Israel. Eisenhower comes in 56 and says, Israel has to leave and the war has to stop. So Eisenhower overrules the British and the French and forces Israel out of Egypt. And for 10 years, things are reasonably quiet between Israel and the Arab coalitions. In the meantime, however, in the mid-1950s, Israel's president, David Ben-Gurion, becomes obsessed with acquiring a nuclear weapon. By the mid-1950s, other countries have nuclearized. The United States has the atomic bomb and a hydrogen bomb. The Soviet Union tests a weapon in 1949. The French and the British get a nuclear bomb. And so in the 1950s, Israel's leader, Ben-Gurion, becomes obsessed with the nuclear bomb. He says the only way that Israel will ever be safe amidst the threat of Egypt and Syria, this Arab coalition against us, he says the only way that we will be safe is if we acquire a nuclear device. And so Israel begins collaborating with the French in the late 1950s to develop a nuclear reactor at Dimona, out in eastern Israel, southeastern Israel. When Dwight Eisenhower leaves office in 1961, he warns JFK, the incoming president, that Israel is acquiring a nuclear bomb and warns Jack Kennedy about this. There's a meeting during the presidential transition between the election and the inauguration, and JFK asks, what do I need to know about? They say Israel is pursuing a nuclear bomb. From 1961 until 1963, JFK is on top of the Israeli prime minister, demanding inspections of their nuclear reactor. The same situation that's playing out with Iran right now. Because Israel does not yet have a nuclear device. They have a reactor, but they're working towards a bomb, and the United States knows it. So JFK is coming to the Israeli prime minister and saying repeatedly, you need to open up the reactor to U.S. inspections. We need them twice a year. They need to be comprehensive. You need to let our scientists in. We need to see what you're doing. And Ben-Gurion, the prime minister, is giving them the runaround. He lets in inspectors, but they literally build fake walls to hide what they're doing. They build a fake facility and walk the inspectors through it, literally with drawn on and fake knobs and switches and everything. Finally, in the middle of 1963, in May and June of 1963, JFK sends a letter to Ben-Gurion and says, listen, I've had enough of your shit. And at this time, this is a tense situation. Ben-Gurion is calling JFK a boy, doesn't respect him because he's young. He's the youngest president to be elected. And it's a very tense relationship. JFK won't invite Ben-Gurion to the White House. Instead, they meet in New York City. They won't have an official state visit. Finally, JFK puts his foot down. This is in May and then again in June of 1963. He says, listen, we will completely isolate Israel. You can no longer count on our support if you don't open up your reactor to U.S.-led inspections twice a year. The Israeli government receives the letter. The next day, Ben-Gurion resigns, allegedly without reading it. Now, obviously, he read it and then resigned so that he could avoid answering the ultimatum. Now, to this day, we don't know why he resigned. He never gave a reason. He was prime minister from 1948, when Israel was declared, until 1963. He was the first prime minister after Israel declared independence, and then except for a little interim part in the mid-1950s for about a year, he was their prime minister uninterrupted from them until 1963, when he resigned the day after he got the letter with no explanation. And to the day that he died, never explained why he resigned. This is the founding father of Israel. JFK sends a letter to Ben-Gurion's successor in July and says the same thing. Look, I told your predecessor, Ben-Gurion, I need inspections or else we're cutting you off. This guy shines him on. Of course, in November 63, JFK is assassinated. His assassin is assassinated by Jack Ruby, otherwise known as Jack Rubenstein, who is connected to the Jewish mafia, guys like Mickey Cohen, who were running guns to Israel in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Why did Jack Ruby kill Lee Harvey Oswald? Well, he says, I did it for my people. In January 1964, Lyndon Johnson is the president. Israel is believed to have tested their nuclear weapon 2 months after JFK was killed. According to American intelligence, the earliest timetable that Israel could have acquired a nuclear weapon was in January 1964, just months after JFK was killed. This is when they went nuclear. After Lyndon Johnson becomes the president, the amount of foreign aid to Israel triples. And previously, whereas foreign aid to Israel was almost all humanitarian and economic aid, now it's 3 times as big, and it's all weapons. It's missiles, it's advanced weaponry, it's tanks, it's all military equipment. And suddenly, the American administration is all in favor of Israel. There's no balance at all. In 1967, Israel launches a surprise attack on Egypt and Syria. Israel pushes and finds that Egypt's air force is completely vulnerable. They're able to sneak onto one of Egypt's airfields, and they find out that they're totally deaf, dumb, and blind. They won't see it coming. So in 1967, Israel starts the Six-Day War, another Arab-Israeli war. Israel launches a surprise attack on Egypt's air force and then Syria's air force. Egypt invades the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula, which is, hang on, I don't have the map in front of me. Egypt invades the Sinai Peninsula here, and they invade the Golan Heights in Syria up to here. They actually go all the way to Damascus, and they're shelling Damascus, but they create a ceasefire line in the Golan, and they take the West Bank. And so Israel controls all of this. They control everything from the Golan in the north, inside Syria, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and they control all of the Sinai Peninsula. Israel is at its territorial peak. During this campaign, there is an American radar ship, a reconnaissance ship off the coast of Israel, the USS Liberty. The reconnaissance ship was there to keep an eye on the evolving military situation in the buildup to the Six-Day War. Israel believes that if that reconnaissance ship is there, it will detect Israeli troop movements that are moving towards Egypt, and it might blow the element of surprise. The United States might know the full extent of their military activities. So Israel launches an all-out attack on the USS Liberty off the coast of Israel. They shoot the ship, they bomb the lifeboats, they see the American flag flying on it, and they attack anyway. Later, they claim it was a case of mistaken identity. They say they thought it was an Egyptian ship, and they shot it down on accident. But it would have been impossible for them to think it was an Egyptian ship. It was waving a giant flag. They shot the lifeboats. It was radioed to them. This is an American ship. They sunk it anyway. They tried to kill everybody on board because they did not want the U.S. government to know what they were doing in Egypt. Do you know who was a part of the cover-up, who headed up the investigation on behalf of the Navy a few months later? John McCain Sr. John McCain Sr. headed up the audit into Israel's attack on the Liberty. This is in 1967. That's the Six-Day War. 6 years later, in 1973, Egypt has been humiliated. Syria has been humiliated. These are two military powers in the region, thought to be on par with Israel. They're seeking revenge for what Israel did. And so the president in Egypt, Anwar Sadat, comes up with a plan. They're going to do a surprise attack on Israel. And they collaborate with Syria to do it. On October 6th, 1973, during Yom Kippur, Egypt and Syria launch an attack on Israel from both sides. Egypt lands on the west bank of the Sinai Peninsula and moves to take the Sinai from Israel. Syria invades from the north, and they take back the Golan Heights near the Sea of Galilee. Israel's caught totally off guard. About 12 hours before the attack, they begin mobilizing reservists. But it's too little, too late. They appear to be overrun. Golda Meir, the prime minister of Israel, calls up President Nixon and the Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, and she says, you need to bail us out, otherwise we might take extraordinary measures. At the same time, they take out their nuclear bombs so that they can be detected by U.S. reconnaissance. Israel's pushed to the brink of destruction in a surprise attack. The United States is reluctant to intervene because we believe that if we go in, the Soviet Union will go in on the side of Syria and Egypt. So the United States is deliberating, should we bail out Israel? Golda Meir pulls out Israel's nukes and says, well, if you don't come in, we might have to take extraordinary measures. And Nixon gets the message. They send in a giant airlift of equipment. And by replenishing Israel's equipment, Israel's able to beat back the Syrians and the Egyptians. They rout the Egyptians. They land on the west side, the west bank of the Sinai, and they encircle the Egyptian columns that are inside Sinai. They push the Syrians back to Damascus, and the war is over in a few weeks. During the ceasefire, Israel does not keep their end of the bargain. They keep firing on Egyptians and Syrians. The Soviet Union threatens to get involved. They say that if Israel won't abide by the ceasefire, we'll deploy our troops to the region. And this would start World War III. Finally, a deal is made. Israel adheres to the ceasefire. Everybody pulls out. But it's after this happens in 1973 that many of the left-wing Jews in America move to the right wing. Many of the American Jews, who were all communists at this point, Bolsheviks were all Jews, American communists were all Jews. All these left-wing Jews in America who are Trotskyites, they're communists, they're in New York, they're part of this intellectual movement, they see that the Arabs surprise attacked Israel with the help of the Soviet Union. They realize the Soviet Union might destroy Israel. The Arabs might destroy Israel. If Israel goes, Jews will never be safe. So in 1973, the neoconservative movement is born. And all the neoconservatives are former left-wing Jews that got mugged by reality. They saw that their communist utopia wasn't so friendly towards Israel. So they become the biggest Cold Warriors. They become the biggest foreign policy hawks. They say now we need to destroy the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union backed the surprise attack on Israel that almost destroyed it. So all these guys like Irving Kristol and John Podhoretz and many others from Commentary Magazine, all these Jewish publications, they all come aboard the right wing and they become the biggest Cold Warriors. In 1975 in Israel, there's a big commission that's meant to do an audit on how Israel was caught by surprise, how they didn't see it coming. Because even though they won the war, it's still a major victory morally for the Egyptians and Syrians that they were able to have these military victories and catch Israel off guard. In 1976, the Likud party comes to power in Israel. For the first time, even though Israel was dominated for many decades by the Labor Party, by left-wing parties, a right-wing party called Likud, which emerges from the revisionist Zionists that wanted all of Israel, that wanted Transjordan, they come to power. And they have a new doctrine. It's promulgated by Oded Yinon. They say the new doctrine of the state of Israel is we have to destroy all of our enemies. Oded Yinon's plan for the 1980s says the only way that Israel can be safe is if we destroy all of our neighbors. It says that even though our neighbors are strong militarily and our borders are under threat, he says our neighbors are actually weak because they're based on diversity. Oded Yinon says that Lebanon has 5 different nations inside of it. It has a Christian nation, a Shiite nation, a Druze nation, all kinds of different ethnicities living inside. It says Syria has Alawites in the west, Sunnis everywhere else, Druze in the south. It says that Egypt has a big Coptic Christian population, a big Muslim population. It says that Iraq has the Kurds and the Sunnis and the Shiites. Iran has a lot of Turks and Persians and other groups living inside of it. So in the late 1970s, when the Likud party comes to power after the failures of the left-wing party to anticipate the surprise attack, they say it's time to go on the offensive and blow up all these different countries. In 1978, Israel brokers a peace agreement with Egypt. Israel gives them the Sinai Peninsula. Egypt signs a treaty with Israel. Egypt becomes the first country to normalize relations with Israel. And that is the year, by the way, that Egypt becomes one of the biggest recipients of U.S. foreign aid. And so does Israel. 1978 is the Camp David Accords. They make this treaty. It's ratified in 79. It's in that year that Israel becomes the number 1 recipient of foreign aid. Egypt becomes number 2. And they both receive massive amounts of money to make this deal. In 1978, Israel goes to war in Lebanon. In 1979, there is an Islamic revolution in Iran. The Ayatollah and the Green Revolution, the Islamic Revolution, overthrows the Shah. They hold the Americans hostage in the embassy, and they declare a revolutionary Shiite caliphate. The Israelis are perturbed by this. In 1982, they invade Lebanon because Palestinians keep doing cross-border raids in Israel. Israel invades Lebanon as part of their strategy to go on the offensive. When they invade Lebanon, Iran comes all the way over and starts training up Lebanese militias, Shiite militias in the south. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the guarantor of the revolution, comes to Lebanon and starts training them up. That becomes Hezbollah. In 1981, Iraq is developing a nuclear weapon. They get a reactor from France. They start building up a nuclear weapons program. In 1981, Israel launches a strike on it. They bomb the reactor. Iraq and Iran begin a 10-year war in the 1980s. Israel and the United States back both sides. Israel predominantly backs Iran because they view Saddam Hussein in Iraq as the bigger threat, because he's developing a nuclear weapon. In 1990, Iraq invades Kuwait. Iraq threatens to invade Saudi Arabia. It launches missiles at Israel. George Bush invades Iraq, and he does not topple the government of Saddam Hussein. He oversees the destruction of their nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons programs. He demilitarizes Iraq, its missiles, its navy, but he leaves the regime intact. In response to this, Israel almost kills George Bush because Israel wants the United States to topple the Saddam Hussein regime. 1994, Israel makes peace with Jordan. Jordan becomes the second country to normalize relations with Israel. Jordan becomes the third largest recipient of U.S. foreign aid. In 1996, a new doctrine is put out. This one is by Richard Pearl, Douglas Faith, David Wormser. And this is coordinated by the Bibi Netanyahu government in Israel. They call it the Clean Break Memo. They say that for too long, the Israeli government is not right-wing enough. They say even though we're on the offensive, they say we're still not safe. They say we gave up the Sinai Peninsula for peace with Egypt. They said we gave up the West Bank for peace with Jordan. They say we don't want to give up Golan for peace with Syria. We can't keep giving up land in exchange for peace with the Palestinians and our neighbors. They say, so we need a clean break with the past. And in order to secure our northern border, because Egypt and Jordan are already taken care of, they say we need to knock out Saddam Hussein in Iraq, we need to take out Syria, and then we need to take out Iran. We need to take out Iraq because Saddam Hussein is too belligerent. We need to take out Syria because they remain fundamentally at war with us and challenging us. And we need to take out Iran because they have trained up Hezbollah in Lebanon and they're sponsoring some of our adversaries. 2003, the Israelis that drafted that report come into the George W. Bush administration. After 9/11, they fabricate intelligence that Saddam Hussein was involved in 9/11 and other terrorist plots. They say that Saddam Hussein is once again building up his nuclear arsenal like they did in 91. Their program, which was not fully destroyed in 1990, they claim, we need to go in. The United States invades Iraq and topples the government. But Israel wants more. Israel wants us to invade every country. In 2003, Libya voluntarily denuclearizes. Libya sees what has happened to Iraq. Libya makes an agreement with the United States. We'll give up our nuclear program. You can inspect it. Just don't invade us. In 2006, Netanyahu is calling for war in Iran, for war in Syria. In 2007, Israel bombs Syria's nuclear program because they believe they're getting a weapon. In 2011, the Arab Spring starts in Tunisia. Pro-democracy, pro-liberal protests. They spread all across northern Africa. They spread into Libya, to Egypt, then into Syria and elsewhere in the broader Middle East. They bring down Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. He's replaced by the Muslim Brotherhood. They threaten to topple Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. NATO airstrikes led by the United States finish the job. They topple Libya's government. They kill Muammar Gaddafi. In Syria, protests lead to major opposition movements against the regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. With the Syrian regime and the Iraqi regime weakened, and the United States withdrawing from Iraq in 2011, suddenly there's a radical Islamist group that spawns in the middle of Iraq and Syria. It's called ISIS. And they start ripping through Iraq, ripping through Syria. Now everybody says the United States has to remain in the Middle East. 2013, there's allegations that Assad is using chemical weapons. They say we have to intervene and overthrow the government. Obama declines, but he does eventually get involved in 2014 and 2015. We start bombing pro-government forces, and we're bombing ISIS. This is the history of the Middle East. Israel's at war with all of its neighbors. All of its neighbors start to die. There's war in Lebanon. There's war in Iraq. The government of Libya is toppled. The government of Egypt is toppled. The government of Syria is toppled. Egypt and Jordan are forced to make peace. They become U.S. puppet states. This is the history of the Middle East. Now, why does Iraq and Syria and Libya and even Iran at one point, why do they have nuclear programs? Because Israel, at the same time, is pursuing regime change against all these different countries. Israel's allied with the United States, and one after the other, the dominoes are falling. There's a civil war in Somalia. There's a civil war in Sudan, which splits them into two countries. Now there's a civil war in Sudan. Everywhere they look, they see the governments falling to civil war, regime change, or U.S. occupation. So they want to nuclearize. Iraq gets a nuclear program, they get bombed. The United States comes in and dismantles it, they get invaded anyway. They didn't even have nukes. Libya gives up their nukes, they get bombed and replaced anyway. Syria's program gets bombed and they give it up, they get regime changed anyway. This is why Iran wants a bomb. And of course, Israel is protected from all of these conflicts because they're the only ones that have the bomb. They've got the United States in their pocket, they've got the neocons in the administration. They're protected from any kind of accountability. They've got two aces in the hole. This is why Iran has a nuclear program. And this is why over the past 20 years, Iran has been building up its deterrent capability. They have a latent nuclear weapons program, and they have built up a proxy network in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, inside Yemen. That is to protect themselves from Israel. Israel could always bomb them. The United States could always bomb them. They could always do regime change and invade. Having a proxy network ensures that Iran has a second strike capability to hit Israel back. Having a nuclear arsenal makes it more complicated and more tricky and serves as a form of a deterrent for the United States getting involved unnecessarily. Then you have the October 7th attacks. That's in response to the new dynamic. After Israel's carried out all these wars, the United States is fatigued. Iran has spread its influence across the region. Israel recognizes it's time now to end the Middle Eastern conflict once and for all. They say that we've pacified Libya. Libya is a non-factor. They're in the middle of a civil war. Sudan is in the middle of a civil war. Somalia is in a civil war. Yemen is in a civil war. Egypt and Jordan have made peace with Israel. Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates and Morocco have made treaties with Israel in the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia is talking about making peace with Israel. Iraq was invaded by the United States and is now friendly. Syria is divided and weakened entirely. The same is true of Lebanon. The only remaining adversary at the time of October 7th in 2023 is Iran and all of its proxies in southern Lebanon, in Yemen, in Iraq, and the Assad regime, which is not totally defeated in Syria. So what happens on October 7th? Israel is attacked by Hamas from the Gaza Strip. They see it coming. They let it happen anyway. Hamas is sponsored by Iran. Israel uses this as a pretext to declare war against Iran and all of its proxies. Israel moves its troops to the north with southern Lebanon to confront Hezbollah. And they begin their blockade, their bombing campaign and invasion of Gaza. They're killing thousands of people. They're destroying all the infrastructure. In response to this barbaric campaign, all of Iran's proxies are declaring Israel to defend Palestine. Hezbollah is bombing Israel in the north. The Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria are bombing Israel from the east. And the Houthis are bombing Israel from the south, and they're bombing commercial shipping in the Red Sea. Israel uses this as an opportunity to systematically destroy all of the proxies. First, they defeat Hamas. By May of 2024, Hamas is utterly defeated. They have no major strongholds. Then Israel moves their forces to the north. In October of 2024, they detonate explosive pagers that are held by the leadership of Hezbollah. They conduct 1,000 airstrikes inside southern Lebanon, and then they invade southern Lebanon and they hold it. In December 2024, they carry out airstrikes against Syria, and a Turkish-Israeli U.S.-backed group from Aleppo begins to invade Syria. First, they launch strikes on Aleppo, then they move further south to Hama, then Homs, then Damascus. They overthrow the government. Israel immediately bombs all of Syria's navy, its air defenses, its air force, everything. Hamas is neutralized. Hezbollah is neutralized. The Syrian government is overthrown. Its equipment is destroyed. And the new Syrian regime kicks out the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Israel invades the Golan and takes the south of Syria. In March and April of 2025, Trump is elected. Trump launches a major air campaign against the Houthis in Yemen and significantly degrades them, bombs their port, bombs their capital. This paves the way for the confrontation with Iran. In April 2025, Trump announces he's negotiating with Iran. He says they have 60 days to give up their nuclear program. Iran says, we're not giving up all of our enrichment capability. We don't trust you. We don't trust Israel. Israel's chomping at the bit to get the United States to back an attack on Iran. Last Thursday, Israel attacks Iran's nuclear facilities, but says we can't do it alone. Missiles are raining down on them. They say, we need help. We're not safe. We're imperiled. We need the United States to help. Tonight, the United States carries out its attacks on Iran. And as we talked about earlier tonight and throughout the week, the only way this can end is in regime change in Iran. The regime that was put up in 79, that created that proxy network, the nuclear program, it's going to be gone. And when that is finished, either sometime this year or next, you can see how the entire Middle East, from Morocco all the way through to Egypt, from Somalia to Sudan, from Yemen all the way up to Syria, from Israel to Iran, the entire Middle East will be under the thumb. The entire Middle East and Northern Africa will be under the thumb of Israel. How? The new Syrian government is talking about normalizing ties with Israel. There will be a puppet regime in Iran. Without Iran backing Hezbollah, Hezbollah will collapse, and there'll be a friendly regime in Lebanon. Iraq was already occupied by the United States. Jordan and Egypt made peace 20 and 50 years ago. Libya has been cut apart by civil war, just like Sudan, just like Somalia. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the Emirates all made peace with the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia is the next shoe to drop. Without the support of Iran, the Houthis in Yemen will collapse. There'll be a friendly regime there too. Turkey is a NATO member and a longtime ally of Israel. So is Azerbaijan. The entire Middle East will fall to Israel. And then what will happen is this. The United States wants to pivot to the Pacific to confront China. We recognize that all the action in the 21st century is going to happen here, not here. All the action in the 21st century is going to be India, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, the Asian tigers. And to some extent, it's going to be in Central Africa because that's where the critical minerals are. To some extent, it'll be in South and Central America. That's where a trade war is happening. We want to leave the Middle East. How do we leave the Middle East? We have to hand off our responsibilities to our allies and partners. So we're going to arm Israel and Saudi Arabia to the teeth. And we're going to give Israel and Saudi Arabia control over the entire region. But Saudi Arabia is a very fragile state. It's a country of foreign workers. It's a country of a restive population. It's a fragile, hereditary monarchy from 100 years ago. Saudi Arabia could never resist Israel, even if they wanted to. If Israel could take out Iran, they could take out any one of these fragile Gulf monarchies, any one of these countries. That means that Israel will dominate the entire region. And that means that all the trade that goes through the Red Sea, all the trade that goes through the Persian Gulf, all of the Belt and Road Initiative, ports and highways and rail, all of the India, Middle East, Europe corridor infrastructure, it will all go through a region controlled by Israel. All the trade from Africa, Asia, and Europe that has to go through water or land routes in this region, it's going to be going over Israeli soil. It's all going to be going over Israeli clay. That's their end game. That's the big picture. They want to dominate the region, profit from all the trade. They will profit from China and the United States, from BRICS and the Abraham Alliance. That is the next phase of development. That's how they go from not even a country surrounded by enemies to every country has been destroyed and pacified to total regional hegemony over the Middle East. And then they want to ditch the United States. Then they want to say, we don't want your foreign aid anymore. It gives you too much leverage over us. We want to conduct our own independent foreign policy. And that means we could do whatever we want. We can hedge and work with China if we want. We can work with Russia. We can work with whoever we want. And that's how we were used to give birth to a rival power. That's how we were used, like a parasite does, to give birth to a rival entity. And so, yeah, if you're completely ignorant, you would say, oh, Iran wants nuclear weapons because they just want to kill everybody. No, Iran wants nuclear weapons because Israel and the United States have destroyed every one of Israel's neighbors. And Iran doesn't even have a nuclear bomb. Israel does. And we were brought into Iran not because of the nuclear crisis. The nuclear crisis exists because of what Israel and the United States have done. Now it's being exaggerated to disarm Iran so that Israel can pursue regime change. That's the big picture. That's the story of the Middle East. And it's a story of the arms race. It's a story of subterfuge, of intelligence operations, of deep influence in the United States. None of it would be possible without the United States. Without the Jewish mafia, without the Jewish mafia running guns to Israel in 48, without JFK being assassinated to clear the way for Lyndon Johnson to come in and pour conventional arms into Israel, without Jews in America stealing the United States nuclear program to give it to Israel, without the U.S. bailing them out in 73, without the neocons giving them their war in Iraq, it would have never happened. So the United States is just as much a part of this, and their subterfuge over the Republican Party, over the American state, it's a quintessential part of the plan. And that includes the media and public opinion. So anyway, that's why we're here. And, forgive me if that was a little disorganized or rambly, but, while I have a big audience here, who knows? Now that we're going into a war, there might be wartime censorship. They might take me off the air because we're going to a war with Iran. There's going to be false flags. I mean, maybe. And they don't want people like me to have a voice to counter the narrative. So I thought I would do my due diligence and lay that out. I hope that was a little bit informative, even if it was a little disorganized. I had to put the show together very quickly because the strikes came out of nowhere tonight. But that's all I got for you. That's my show tonight. That's the whole story. And by the way, that's why I've been canceled. For anybody that's watching this and saying, I thought this guy was a Nazi, I thought this guy was a racist, calling me those names is a part of it. Because if people like me were popular and were able to just make arguments in public and do my thing, people would be educated and maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. So that's part of it. Calling everybody who criticizes Israel an anti-Semite, that's why. They don't want you to have the information. The information's out there, but if they attack anybody that advertises the information or puts it out there, well, people aren't going to get it. So that's that. So that's my stream. That's all I got for you. We're at war with Iran. It's a damn shame. We got some super chats here. I'll read them, and then I'm going to get out of here because I got to look. It's been a long week, okay? It's been a long week for your guy. I've had no breaks this week, but that's because, this is the moment. This is my time to shine here. All right, but let's take a look. We'll look at the super chats, and then we're going to get out of here. But thanks, everybody. Before we read the super chats, I just want to say thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And on Monday, I will be back. I'll be doing my show as scheduled on Monday. I'll be early because this is a big deal. So Monday at 8 o'clock Central, if you want the whole story on the strikes and the latest, I'll be covering the war in Iran all week, this coming week, starting Monday. So be sure to tune in. All right, but I'm going to dive in. We'll take a look at the super chats, and we'll see.
Grau I percent $10. Started reading Spy Fail after you mentioned it a couple days ago. Detailed breakdown of Israeli intelligence and American Jews running circles around American intelligence. Mainstream progressive author explaining how Carter covered up an Israeli nuclear test so he didn't upset the Jews. Nice.
Yep, that's a good book. For anybody that's interested, I'm going to give you a few good books, okay? Spy Fail, excellent book. Against Our Better Judgment by Allison Weir. The Israel Lobby by John Mearsheimer. One Nation Under Blackmail by Whitney Webb is a good one. Let's see, what else? Israel Shayhak. 3,000 Years of History of Israel. It's very short, though. Israel Shayhak is a great author. American Pravda by Ron Unz on the Unz Review. I'll give you some of these just while I have you here. I'd be irresponsible not to. Let me give you some book recs, okay? Spy Fail by James Bamford. Against Our Better Judgment by Allison Weir. Great book. This is it. Israel Lobby by Mearsheimer's like one of the preeminent scholars on foreign relations. He's a U Chicago. I mean, this is not coming from, Hitler too or whatever. Unz Review. American Pravda series is great. Whoops. If you pull up Ron Unz, oops, got a little DDoS check here. Where is the, So this American Pravda series is great, really excellent. If you want an opener, this is it. Un's Review American Pravda. If you want a good primer on every subject, it's a series of articles, and you can look like 9/11, 8,000 words, seeking 9/11 truth after 20 years. There's one about 9/11. There's stuff about Mossad assassinations, John McCain and Jeffrey Epstein, how Hitler saved the Allies, the ADL, Holocaust denial. That's a really good one, 18,000 words. Oddities of the Jewish religion is one of my personal favorites. And Ron Unz is Jewish. He's Jewish. He's pretty liberal on a lot of things. Like, he's in favor of immigration. He's not a white nationalist. Like, and he's Jewish. He was in California, ran for governor. Like, none of these people are cranks. Like, these are all like respected scholars. This is a good place to start for everybody. Okay. I'm trying to think. And then Israel Shayhak, he's cited extensively in Ron Unz, but you could just read him directly. I think it's on Internet Archive, actually. The Weight of 3,000 Years. This is on Internet Archive. Anyone can access the PDF. And it's like 100 pages. Or no, I guess it's 300, but... Or no, it's 100 pages. Yeah, it's pretty short. So... Yeah, so those are just some recommendations. Write this down, write this down. All right, with that, we're going to take a look at our super chats. Now we're going to see what you guys have to say. I just want to help you guys out a little bit. All right. Now let's take a look.
Fart Simpson sent $10. That's a nice shirt. Sharp. No homo.
Thank you. There's another one called The Talmud Unmasked. It's by a Catholic priest. That's a good one. Oh, there's so many. So many good books out there. But, all right, those are just a few.
Abbas Ali sent $10. For years my main sources have been Daily Wire and Steven Crowder, but now that you red-pilled me, I want to know what you use. Until you tell me, I'll keep using them.
Well, me. I'm a great source. I told you yesterday, antiwar.com. I just gave you a few.
Tactical Nuke sent $20. Glad I went to confession today. Much love from Tac Nuke and Daisy.
Wow, Tactical Nuke. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Tac Nuke and Daisy. Oh my God, that's crazy. Bruh married an e-girl. But hey, you know what? God
Connor
bless.
MC Grow sent $10. You keep doing these weird segments that no one cares about. Like that painfully long Cookie King bit you did the other night. Who was that for exactly?
Well, it's not for boomers, I'll tell you that for free.
Crank Erzog sent $25. Praying they don't kick up the censorship after this. The truth needs to spread. Also prayers for Christine.
Yeah, that is really the big concern now.
Dan Zamnet sent $50. 07.
Thank you.
Yellow Fever sent $50. Paula Market bet paid out. Here's your cut.
All right, thank you very much. I'll tell you, look, if you bet on this based on my information, you need to pay me out. Because did I not predict that this is exactly what would happen? I said on Thursday, I said, watch the talks on Friday. If the talks fail, we're getting strikes. How is one man so vindicated? I'm so far beyond you. So
Anon64 sent $50. That unreleased AI video of Trump declaring war on Iran would have gone so hard right now. Imagine every single BA-posphere Trump sucker saying, how did Nick predict the future? Hopefully the more earnest people bend the knee now that it's undeniable you were correct. 07 less than 3.
They must submit.
Silver sent $109. W Jews starting World War III. The nothing ever happens chat has been defeated.
Yeah, at least they defeated him. But thank you for the big super chat. I appreciate it.
Dallas sent $4,500. Well, thank you for the big super chat. No message? Even better.
Wow, thank you for the huge soup. That's crazy. Huge super chat from Dallas. Is that the Dallas or is that a different Dallas? Wow. 07's in the chat for Dallas. Well, really, that's from Iran. That's a pallet full of cash straight from Tehran. Straight from Qatar, am I right? No, kidding, of course. It's from Dallas, obviously.
Dallas sent $400. Hi, Nick.
All right, and another to complete the set. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. 07's in the chat. God bless, buddy. Thank you for the support. I couldn't do it without the viewer donations. I'm going to do a little shill here now. I don't do advertisements. I have no sponsors. It's all viewer supported. Otherwise, there'd be no way to do the show. No sponsor wants me to say this shit. So thank you for the massive super chat. We owe the show to you. God bless. We owe the Big Macs, the beer and pizza. Well, for me, the Coke and pizza. I don't do beer, but God bless, buddy. Thank you very much.
Nicholas Jonette sent $12. Do you think Trump is just a cowardly person afraid of death with no faith in God who is blackmailed? Just a fool? Is he a Masonic/crypto Jew from birth? Something else? Or is it just who gives a fuck and fuck that motherfucker? Thanks, Nick.
There's no way to know. In some ways, it doesn't matter. He is what he is, effectively. In his heart of hearts, it almost doesn't matter.
Hilton Head Grow I percent $50. What are your thoughts regarding the potential for conscription?
I think that's unlikely. But, never say never. How wide and deep this can go, nobody knows.
Zimgroy percent $80. You're 10% of the bet, sir. What would the next step be if Iran were to acquire a nuclear bomb?
Thank you, man. Oh, if they acquire a nuclear bomb, we'd probably nuke them. I don't think they will, though. I don't think they'll be able to do that. But, it's not outside the question that we will see a false flag before this is over. I mean, who knows? This is a big and serious country. Israel wants to topple the government. Who's to say they don't detonate a dirty bomb? Who's to say they don't do something outrageous? I mean, we can, at the risk of sounding hysterical or alarmist, anything is possible now. I don't think that's likely, but anything is possible, so it's a little freaky.
Rich people sent $100. Thanks for the show, Nick. Now that the word got out that all the other viewers and fans are fake, I realize that you're all putting in so much effort just for me to have a world-class show every day. Truly grateful to you and Iran for doing all this. Also shout out to Qatar and the Kremlin for their help. When will this be available in VR?
Thank you for the big super chat. Will what be available? The show? I don't know. Can't you watch it in VR? Yeah, thank you too. I'd like to thank God and the Kremlin and the Ayatollah. No, obviously that's a bunch of propaganda. I'm America first. I don't even look, fuck Russia, fuck Iran. It's about America. I'm America first.
Chris Knob sent $100. Do you think Trump knows what this is going to do to his legacy, especially with the people who backed him? Or do you think he cares more about his donors and is surrounded by so many pro-Israel advisors that he has no clue? He's close to being a senile old man and I doubt he's reading comments on Twitter or Truth. He's also a boomer who's been propagandized for decades.
Like I said, who knows? I mean, who knows? He could be, it could be as simple as he's a clueless boomer. He's being manipulated. I don't know. At a certain point, you have to take responsibility. That's why I say it doesn't matter. Whether he's being tricked by his advisors, there's just no excuse at this point. So, I mean, he has the blame one way or the other.
Based Wife Happy Life sent $100. Wife found you during the first Roy per war. Been watching ever since. Unbelievable how on the money you have been. Thank you for keeping us informed. You are a blessing to humankind.
Wow.
$100 says you hit the next one on the head. Make America groped again.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words and the big super chat. It is pretty crazy. I mean, look, if you watch the show, we obviously have tons of new viewers right now, but if you've been watching my show for 2 years, you got to admit, it's pretty uncanny. If you're one of my viewers that tuned in after Yay 24, after October 7th, I have been on the money on this every night, almost to the point of being annoying. So I do appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Bodway Groy percent $50. I financially prepared for this day for 6 months thanks to you, Nick. It's not much, but I have to pay my dues.
Hey, that's okay, man. Love to hear it. Thank you.
Yeah, I go there sent $100. God bless Israel. How about God bless Nick Fuentes?
Well, God bless America. But thank you for the big super chat. Thank you very much. Thank you for the blessing. Thanks for the big super chat. I do appreciate it.
HLF Mexican HLF Palestinian sent $107. Trump asking not what he can do for our country, but what he can do for Israel. His press release was nothing more than stating he is the best little goy doing Israel's bidding.
Literally.
Total MJF Vindication.
Literally. 5-minute speech. How many times did he mention Israel? Israel safer. We've been in constant contact with the Israelis. I'd like to thank Netanyahu. God bless Israel. He literally said, God bless Israel in it. God bless Israel and God bless the United States. Like, what? It's insane. It's insane.
Oil Adamsticky sent $50. You know all of this about Jewish people / Jewish personland, and you know that they have the power to kill sitting presidents and have networks of hidden allies. Did you expect Trump to take office and just say stop and they would listen? What would you have done differently to stop all of this and remain alive and not JFK or Gaddafi?
Who knows? It would have been like a martial law thing. Like you would have to actually go into a bunker and give a televised address. I mean, we are so late in the hour. The hour is so late. We're so late in the game. I don't even know what you could have done, but he should have tried to do something, maybe give a speech. There's ways. We're the United States. You're telling me we couldn't protect our country? I mean, I find that hard to believe that there was no way that we could have avoided this.
BMAX sent $100. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the super chat. I appreciate it. I'm going to read the big ones tonight because this is a supplementary stream.
Joey Bats sent $50. The cope I'm seeing now is we've been at war with Iran since 1979. These people are totally lost. It's sad. Thanks for stream, man. Middle East AP course in one show.
Yeah, that's how they're framing it, right? The real forever war is the war with Iran. You know what this is called? This is called Hasbara. This is called Hasbara. Do you know what Hasbara is? I'll educate you. The public diplomacy of Israel, or Hasbara, includes mass communication, individual interactions with foreigners through social media and traditional media, as well as cultural diplomacy. Hasbara roughly means explaining. It is a communicative strategy that seeks to explain actions, whether or not they are justified. It focuses on providing explanations about one's actions. It has been called a reactive and event-driven approach. The French journalist gave the following example of Hasbara, in a French paper citing an IDF spokesman. As rockets traced white lines across the sky on New Year's Eve, Colonel Rafowitz gave vent to his outrage on the news. For those wondering why Israel has to eliminate Hamas, here's your answer. Hamas terrorists are indiscriminately bombing Israeli cities on the stroke of midnight. There were no reported Israeli casualties, but on December 31st, the IDF's bombing of Gaza continued uninterrupted, causing 300 deaths, just like any other day. A few days later, the total number of neutralized Palestinians, at least a third of them children, passed 22,000. About this, he said nothing. Edward Said wrote in 2001, Hasbara methods used during the Second Intifada, including lunches and free trips for journalists, seminars for Jewish students, invitations to members of Congress, pamphlets and money for election campaigns, telling photographers and writers what to photograph or write about, lectures and concert tours by prominent Israelis, references to the Holocaust, and newspapers and advertisements attacking Arabs and praising Israel. It encompasses different forms of communication and interaction with the public. It engages in open and fully attributable, undirectional or unidirectional mass communication that targets unaffiliated civil populations in other countries. In other words, they're trying to convince the masses that they're awesome, and they literally have a handbook for it. You can, once again, find that on Internet Archive. It's called the Hasbara Handbook. And it's a step-by-step guide on how to convince people to support Israel. I don't know if you could read this. Let me do full screen. But they literally publish a handbook, how to trick the Goyim. 25 rules for effective communication, a glossary of words that work, how to talk about Palestinian self-government, isolating Iran-backed Hamas as an obstacle to peace, the language of tackling a nuclear Iran, Gaza, Israel's right to self-defense and defensible borders, loan guarantees and military aid. Okay, this was published in 2009. It was published in 2009. Let's go to words that work. How can I scroll through? Look at what they do. Emphasize that Jewish Israelis and Arab Israelis enjoy equal rights. Paint a vivid picture of what life is like in Israeli communities vulnerable to rocket attacks. We have all made mistakes. Admitting that Israel has and continues to make mistakes does not undermine the overall justice of Israel's goals. Let's see. What are some of the other sections? There's another one that kind of lays out their particular strategy. Or you know what? I'm thinking of even a different handbook. But we'll go to, let's see, 33. Point is, like, this is all out of them. When they say stuff like the real forever wars is Iran, I mean, it's literally out of a playbook like this. Okay. They literally make guidebooks. All Americans, even those on the left, and many Europeans get that Iran-backed Hamas is a terrorist organization. However, to Americans, there's a vital distinction between the Hamas leadership and Palestinian people that you must appreciate and weave into all of your language about Gaza. To them, Hamas is evil, but the Palestinian people are poor and underrepresented. For now, your rhetorical quarrel needs to be with Hamas, not the people of Palestine. A big picture approach is this. You must isolate Hamas as a cause of delay of achieving a two-state solution, source of harm to the Palestinians, and a reason why Israel must defend itself. Frank Luntz, this is literally his job. Have you ever heard of or seen Frank Luntz? This was literally his job. In December, whoops. Hang on. In December 2008 to January 2009, Luntz wrote a report titled Israel's Project 2009 Global Language Dictionary. He wrote that book that I just showed you. It was commissioned by the Israel Project and meant to advise media spokespeople to use specific language he believed would create a more favorable impression of Israel in the United States and the rest of the international community. And Frank Luntz was roommates with Kevin McCarthy, the former Speaker of the House. Contributor on Fox News, does opinion polling. Hang on, maybe it was in another piece. Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy admits he rented a room from GOP pollster. Okay, so the guy that wrote that book, when they say things like the real forever war is Iran, that is an advisory that has been created by marketing people like Frank Luntz, who wrote one of them 15 years ago. He was a roommate with the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, okay? So when they say things like Israel's white, the reason they hate Israel is because they think Israel's white and they hate settler colonialism like BLM does. That's coming out of a playbook. That's literally coming out of a handbook written by people like Frank Luntz, who are paid by the Israel Project to write it. Okay, just so you understand. Anyway. So that's that. But we could get back to the super chats. I just want to point that out. Because a lot of people don't know this stuff. So.
Lee Rigel sent $50. What do you think the Taliban's response to all of this is? I don't know if I just haven't been paying attention much, but they seem oddly quiet over there.
They can't do anything about it. They're obviously against it, I'm sure.
Albunda sent $50. Thank you for your stream on your day off.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, hey, it's...
Repose sent $50. Right again about everything award.
Yeah, I'm racking them up.
Roy Masterflex sent $100. No message.
Thank you very much. I
Permabella sent
appreciate it.
$100. Right about everything, every day, always award.
Right about everything award. Fell for it again award for you, but not you in particular. But thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.
And 1124 sent $50. Got this cash from some boomers who thought they were donating to get an Israeli and U.S. flag pin.
Let's go.
Redirecting the funds to a good cause 07.
Valid. That's valid.
7 sent $50.
Thank you so much.
Colonial Yankee sent $50. Have you heard about the curse of the 8th decade? The Jews had historically been unable to hold their own territory for more than 80 years before they collapsed from internal strife. They turned 77 this year. It feels like this situation has sealed their fate.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was 77 years. Well, 77 is key because it's 7 is their big number. 7 generations, 77 years. That's a big thing in Jewish mysticism. That's kind of freaky. The 7, I didn't even realize. How could I have not seen that? 77 years. That's terrifying, bro, for real. You know, because the, what do you call it? Menachem Schneerson was the seventh Rebbe of the Chabad-Lubavitch dynasty. That's why they believe he was the Messiah. That's their big thing. 7 and 77. That's crazy. I didn't even realize that.
Rubin sent $100. Godspeed.
Thank you for the big super chat. I
Mike Benjamin
appreciate
sent $50. Your impact is everywhere. I was playing the blackest video game ever, NBA 2K25, and there was a guy in voice chat playing your show at full volume. Even the black people started agreeing with your points about Jews. Do you
Let's
recommend any
fucking
grow-uppers
go.
become police officers? Obviously, the military is cooked.
No, I wouldn't recommend that necessarily. I mean, I think people should get involved in politics, but you got to become a one-man army. Every groyper needs to become a one-man army. Intelligent, physically fit. We may be in a survival situation soon, so you got to prepare in all ways. And not do anything violent or anything, but just be prepared.
Chris NRS sent $100. Who would I be to send just a $10 super chat? I pray that God blesses us all during these troubling times, but all we can do is trust Jesus and his plan.
Well, thank you so much. That is honestly the most comfort that anyone can ever have is put yourself in God's hands. The world is in God's hands. So what will happen to us, what will happen to the world, what will happen today or tomorrow, it's all in God's hands. All you could do is be humble and pray and fight every day. I mean, I still believe in fighting, but the outcome is not up to us. So wise words.
Andy 20 sent $50. The Ayatollah? More like the I you told you so.
Yeah, big time.
Chris NRS sent $200. Jesus Christ for President 2028 NHH07.
Thank you for another big super chat. Chris NRS, big supporter of the show. If only we could have that.
Guy Nunkkoepi sent $50.
That'd
Saluting
be nice.
face emoji.
But we get something better. We get Jesus Christ as Savior and as King. I'll take that any day of the week over President. So
Minion Thomas sent $75. Fitting that Father James Maudsley would drop the next episode of his HN series today. Everyone should check it out. Pray for peace. Our Lady's Immaculate Heart will triumph.
So true. Thank you.
Zion Don sent $50. You were right. End of the empire. Frankly, it had to go here as we never were going to heal. Also, assassination attempt was completely fake. He bent down, smeared a squib on his ear, stood up, meaning innocent lives probably were lost to push this whole fantasy.
I don't believe that. I think that's not true.
The Great Noticer sent $100. Always right. Always vindicated. Always America.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the big super chat. Okay, I think we might have. Let me just sort it. We might have one more. That's it. Okay, that's our last super chat. I apologize if I didn't get to yours. I'm only reading the big ones tonight because it's a weekend and it's getting late. So that's all I got for you. But remember to smash the follow button, smash the like button, leave a comment down below. I'm on the air every weeknight, Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock Central. I'll be back on Monday as normal, so make sure to tune in. Thank you to all of our top super chatters. Massive special thank you to Dallas. Huge thank you to him. Thank you to Chris NRS. Great Noticer, Silver, half Mexican, half Palestinian. Minion Thomist. Rich People Win. Chris Knopp. Based Wife, Happy Life. Duke Law. Go There, BMAC. Groitmaster Flex, Permabola. Rubines, and Andy Paulus. I'll read this one super
Andy Paulus
quick.
sent $100. Paula Market bet that U.S. strikes Iran by EOD Sunday. Odds were at 10% this morning, but I knew it was a pretty safe bet after years of her analysis. More failed nuclear negotiations Friday. Seymour Hersh saying Trump wanted to strike before stock market open Monday and the B-2 bombers taking flight last night. Thank you for her money, BAP/Magatar.
Nice work. We got one more. Then we're done.
Zionchino00 sent $65. First time watching the AF stream. Absolutely phenomenal job laying out the history of Israel at the end of your segment with JFK 6 Days War, Iran/Iraq, etc. Do you have a document that outlines that as clearly and succinctly as you described? If so, could you share it on X?
I just did it. You just watched it. So, but that's all I got. I will see you on Monday. Until then, have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your evening.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo. It's going to be only America first. America first. The American people will come first once again.